This is a great turnout for this morning. I thought nobody would be here, but you're all terrific.
Come on, Betsy. Everyone likes to talk trash.
There she goes. I'd like to introduce you to Commissioner Jesse Tisch. Hello. And I have actually known Jesse for a long time. I'm not going to give you that sort of spiel. But anyway, she is unbelievably talented. And I read a blurb about her in the Harvard Business Review, which was glowing. They never write anything glowing about anybody, right?
Well, I actually, it was great. This was great. But I thought, like, if you want good PR, go to your alma mater's fundraising magazine and have them write about you.
We know the trick. Anyway, take it away, Jesse. My first question is, what did you find when you came in as commissioner? And give us the date. I can't remember.
Okay. I started as sanitation commissioner 2 years ago. It was my dream job. I know people find that crazy, but I was really desperate to be sanitation commissioner. And the reason I was desperate to be sanitation commissioner is because I believe that we don't have to live this way. Every day, New Yorkers leave 44 billion pounds of trash bags on our curbs. Nothing about the way that those bags are set out or the way that they are collected has changed in 50 years. When I worked at the police department for the vast majority of my career for 12 years. And I always would joke every time we'd roll out a new modernization thing and people would give me a hard time, I would say, 100 years of tradition uninspired or unimpeded by progress. I would say in the trash collection field, it felt much the same way. We had been doing things the same way for half a century. And I believe that sanitation is the essential service. And if we think about and treat our trash differently, we can have an enormous effect on quality of life in New York City. I say we very intentionally, and by we, I don't just mean the Department of Sanitation. If there is one thing that I have learned and seen and frankly lived for the past 2 years, is that cleanliness, like public safety, is very much a shared responsibility. And for us to be successful in the things that we are taking on, we need all 3.5 million residents in the city to put out their trash differently. We need all 200,000 businesses in the city to put out their trash differently. So this is very much a public-private partnership, but the essential thing to drive quality of life changes in New York City, in my opinion.
And you are a very brave person because this is probably the most difficult job in the city. I read in the article about you that they say that you know how to use your technological skills to manage. Can you give us a couple of specific examples about that?
Sure. If it's helpful, this is my 17th year in city government. My first 12 years were at the NYPD, as I mentioned. Most of my time at the NYPD was as Deputy Commissioner of Information Technology. And then after that, I was CIO of the city. Right before the pandemic started, I started that job. And then it was like, surprise, everything has to go online now. Those were 2 very bad years. But I would say most of my management style is very much driven by my police background. And I've brought, and somewhat my technology background, I've brought a lot of that with me to the Department of Sanitation. So as an example, at the NYPD, one great management tool that they've had for 20, 30 years, since Commissioner Bratton was commissioner the first time, was CompStat, where every Monday, the numbers are published about the major crimes by citywide, by borough, by precinct. And so everyone knows where they stand, and there are at least some objective metrics that they can use to score their performance. And every Thursday at the NYPD, there is a CompStat meeting. It starts at 7:00 in the morning. One borough each week is called in, and they are grilled on their numbers. At the Department of Sanitation, there weren't any real objective measures or metrics that the workforce was using to say, hey, how am I doing? Or at least, am I doing better than I was doing last year? Now, you might say, oh, that's because they don't have anything that's like crime complaints, which is what the NYPD uses. How many complaints do I have of murder? How many complaints do I have of grand larceny or robbery? But I think having some form of metrics to at least guide a general sense of how we're doing is very important. So what we do have at the Department of Sanitation is a lot of 311 complaints and requests. From everything from dirty conditions to missed collections to illegal dumping. And so what we've done at the Department of Sanitation is we have put together what we call Trash Dash. It's our version of CompStat. It works just the same way, but instead of looking at murders and grand larcenies and felony assaults, we are looking at dirty conditions, miscollections, those types of things. Carol will be happy to know that we also have workforce efficiency metrics in our Trash Dash, how many truck starts we have, and also our enforcement numbers. And what we do is we compare the number in week to date, month to date, year to date, 2024 versus 2023. And we call one borough in every Thursday, and we grill them on our numbers. And guess what? When you start to do that and you start to focus on it and you say to your superintendents on Thursdays, why are your miscollection numbers so high? They go down. These are the types of things that can and should be managed. And one of the things we are trying to do, or I'm trying to do at the Department of Sanitation, is reorient the place around a bit more around customer service. Not customer service like, oh, someone called, I'm like running to do this, but systemic change. Why are we missing so many collections? Are there specific areas where we're missing them? Is there something about the routes? Is there something about the sanitation worker? Do they need to be retrained? And by taking the CompStat model, I think we're beginning to drive successful results around our customer service.
If you all look at the picture of the trucks, I think those are the new trucks. I can't quite see them. And both places. Can you explain to us how in the world you're going to fight the people who park their cars on the streets? I happen to live on one of those. And they're not going to be able to park them when you bring your beautiful new trucks, which I don't know how much.
They're gorgeous.
How much do they cost?
I think 10% more than a current, an old school sanitation truck. But I think like that was with the R&D cost. I think it's going to be in the very same ballpark, similar ballpark as our existing trucks. But I can explain how I'm going to fight this fight. So the first thing for everyone to understand is that we are in the midst of a massive trash revolution in New York City. I was alluding to it when I was responding to the first question, but the trash revolution is basically about getting the 44 million pounds of trash we put each day off of the curbs and into containers. Like people look at the rat problem in New York City and they're like, geez, I wonder why we have such a big rat problem. It's like, well, we leave 44 million pounds of trash on our curbs every day. That might be one place to look. And so the mayor has been very strong here in pushing to get all of the trash off of the curbs and into containers, but not all trash is the same. And so what we've done is we've developed a model after looking at this very hard for a year for how we are going to containerize all the trash in New York City. And we are well down the road of implementing it. So the first piece of the model is businesses. Business trash represents about half the trash in the city. It's 20 million pounds a day. And what we've said, effective March 1st, all businesses have to put their trash in wheelie bins. Residential trash is the other half of the trash in the city. We're in the fall, 1 to 9 unit buildings are going to have to put their trash in wheelie bins. For larger buildings, 31 units and more, we are going to do what they've done in major cities around the world for decades. And we are going to put large containers in the parking lane for the trash. But our model is going to be slightly different from the European model, where those containers are not going to be shared. They are going to be assigned to specific buildings. Many of the problems they have in European cities with those containers overflowing is due to the fact that they are shared. So they can't predict how much trash is going to go into each container. We are taking advantage of New York City's density. A building of 30 units can fill its own 4 cubic yard container. And so we're going to be assigning these large fixed containers on the streets to buildings of 30 units or more. Buildings of 10 to 30 units are going to have a choice. And if they want to use wheelie bins, they'll be able to use wheelie bins. They go on the sidewalk. And if they want to use the fixed containers, the larger ones in the parking lane, they can do so. And so to answer your question, I think it's important to understand the model. We could have said the large fixed containers that go in the parking lane, they're for all residential properties in New York City, and they're also all for businesses. And then the parkers would have and should have lost their mind at me. What we have done is, I believe that the model that we've come up with minimizes the impact on parking. There's still a very clear impact on parking. We estimate it's about 1% of parking citywide. We're doing environmental review now to be more specific about that number. And obviously in neighborhoods that have more 30 unit larger buildings, the impacts to parking will be more significant. But I also want to say this, curbside space in New York City is probably the most valuable resource or real estate we have in the city, or some of the most valuable real estate we have in the city. And it's a fixed amount of curbside space, and we have to decide what's important to us. I believe restoring dignity and order to our streets, cleaning them up, is one of the highest and best use cases for that curbside space. And one of the things that I enjoy about the trash revolution, although I enjoy a lot about the trash revolution, is I feel like we're on the side of what's right here. Like if you go to cities around the world, they don't live this way. And when people from different parts of the world come and visit New York City, they're shocked by the mountains of trash. And I also have to say, we get a lot of credit for doing this, but it's really not that hard. I mean, yes, we did a lot of number crunching to figure out what the right model was. And that took some time, but this is not rocket science. This is really about willpower. And the mayor has been unbelievable. He said to all 8.5 million New Yorkers, every resident and every business, you have to change the way you do something. You do a thing that you do 2 or 3 times a week. You just have to change the way you do it. And no one likes change. But what I have seen over the past 6 months is New Yorkers are beginning to understand and come around to it. That doesn't mean that everyone loves it, but we are going to keep going until all of that trash is containerized.
Well, thank you. I admire your optimism about how people are going to react. But let's talk about rats.
I don't need them to like it. I need them to do it. And I'm positive that once they do it, they're going to like it. Every time you see a wheelie bin on the curbs, and if you haven't seen them, you're not looking. Because 9 months ago, there were a grand total of 0 wheelie bins on the sidewalks in New York City. Walk down any commercial corridor today, 7 months into the effort, and it was just mandatory for all buildings on March 1st, they're all over the place. And when you see those wheelie bins, remember, that wheelie bin is there in place of a pile of heaping trash. It makes a really big difference.
Interesting. Can you describe a wheelie bin? I don't think I've seen them.
Oh no, you have. They're just like they're little garbage cans on wheels. You just wheel it.
Oh, that's
like in
all
the
it is?
suburbs. Yeah.
How do you lock it?
You don't have to let it's filled with trash. You don't have to lock it. Why? What are you locking it from?
What about people coming in, throwing all their trash in from other places?
God bless. It's better there than on the floor. But seriously, if next time you walk down a commercial corridor, which may not be today only because it's pouring, but like look around at trash time. There are wheelie bins there. They really blend into the streetscape beautifully, and they look so much better than the piles of trash. Much more chic.
That's why I haven't seen them. They look so beautiful. I can't discern.
Maybe.
Now you brought it up, so I'm going to go right there. Rats.
The rats that run the city.
The rats, yes. And I would like to know how you interact with the rat czar, and how can you control the rats that belong to you, and the rats that belong to the rat czar? And I just have to make one little comment. When I was Parks Commissioner, we had a solution to the rats. What we did was, now don't get angry at me, we put bombs. There's some kind of pesticide bomb. I know. We put the bombs in the rat holes, and we would blow them up. And now I know people hate me for that, but we did it. And we did get rid of the rats, a lot of the rats.
Wonderful.
In the park. But Jesse, go with it.
Okay. So I touched on this before. Like, we feed rats all day, every day in New York City, just by putting the 44 million pounds of trash bags on the curb. 1/3, we do these studies, they're really gross. We do these studies where we go through the trash like quite scientifically. It's called a waste characterization study. We just released our 2023 version of it. I recommend you check it out. But anyway, if you don't check it out, what it says is more than 1/3 of the material in the trash bags is food waste. And human food is also rat food. So in my opinion, the two biggest things that we can do to bring the war to the rats happen to be in my portfolio, which is great. I love taking on problems. One of them is containerizing the trash. We just discussed that. Yeah. And the other is rolling out curbside composting service, where we take the food waste out of the trash bags. And so by taking them out of the trash bags and putting them into their composting container, we fight the rats. But also we take it out of landfill, and instead we create energy or soil. It's a win all around. This, like the notion of a universal curbside composting service in New York City, I think I described as a psychodrama over the past 20 years. Starting and stopping, you're opting in, you're opting out. Like, there was a lot going on with it. And the mayor, like, truly, like, to bring a line back from the 80s, like, wanted to stop the insanity with it. And he said to me, if you can develop a program that is both effective, one that people will actually use, and cost effective, not going to break the bank in the city, I want to roll out, he said, I want to roll out universal curbside composting service. So it was like a challenge, and we figured it out. And I also have to say, it wasn't really that hard to make it effective in our messaging about it. We just talk to people in their terms about what they care about. Like, people have a lot of problems. I can barely get my kid to a soccer practice every day. I don't really have a lot of time, like most New Yorkers, like sit and think about trash. So for us to lecture them about methane, that is not going to drive participation. what's going to drive participation is when you knock on their door or you send them a mail and you say, you want to fight, you have a rat problem?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what you can do. Use our curbside composting program. That works.
Yeah,
that drives participation. And then to bring the cost down, this was mind-blowing. We did it on straight time rather than overtime. On overtime, you pay double or 1.5 times. On straight time, you pay 1 time. And the other thing we did to drive efficiency was instead of using single bin rear loaders, we're using dual bins. So you can put trash in one side of the truck and compost in the other side of the truck.
Huh, interesting. Well, what I'm interested in, how do the men, mostly men, the New York's strongest, how do they feel about these changes that you are making?
Okay, fully 1/2 of the line of duty injuries at the Department of Sanitation are strains and sprains. Think about it. All day, every day, God bless them, they are picking heavy trash bags up and throwing them into the back of a truck for hours each day. I don't do that. I don't make it to the gym as often as I want, and my back hurts from time to time. So imagine what that's like. With containerization, we plan to get rid of that. There's going to be no more lifting. We're phasing out the lifting of the black bag. For the wheelie bins, we're putting tippers on the back of our existing trucks, and they're going to tip them. And for the large fixed on-street containers, it's all mechanized collection. We've developed this new side loading truck. It picks up the container. There's no lifting on the part of the sanitation workers. So I believe, I understand change is difficult for everyone. This certainly means a huge amount of change at the Department of Sanitation, but I am convinced that this is change that the sanitation workers will be huge beneficiaries of, as well as the public with cleaner streets.
And when do you anticipate that this all can happen?
So half of the business trash is done. Well, the rules are in place as of March 1st for all businesses. We did 1 month of warnings, and now we're going to enforce the crap out of it. I tried to whisper that word. Not enforcement for enforcement's sake, but enforcement because this is going to make a big difference to how our streets look and feel. On the residential side, the mandate for 1 to 9 unit buildings goes into effect in the fall. Why am I waiting till the fall? Because we are building this truly stunning, standardized New York City wheelie bin for residential use so that it will work with the tippers on the backs of our trucks. And I wanted to wait for that wheelie bin to be ready before the mandate goes into place. So that will be this fall. And then in spring of 2025, so not this spring, next spring, we're doing the large fixed on-street European model with the special trucks in all of West Harlem, an entire district. Yeah, right. It's very exciting. And not when that works, no, if that works, the mayor said we're going to roll it out citywide. And it won't be hard to roll it out citywide. We just have to pilot it in one district first to make sure that we got the model right, that in all of our number crunching in the lab, like there wasn't something that we missed about the reality of the street. So after that pilot, I hope you'll see a very aggressive push to roll out the fixed on-street containers. And my great hope in all of this is that 5 years from now, we look back and we're like, oh my God, do you remember when we used to throw 44 million pounds of trash on the streets of New York City every day? Like, I want this just to be a bad dream.
Wow. Well, this is a brave lady. Now, I'm going to open this up to questions because I'm sure all of you are eager to ask them. So let's go. I'm sorry.
I'm going to start with one of our viewers that's watching the live stream. We've got about 20 some people. This is from Judith Matkoff. I live in a two-family house in Harlem in the pilot containerization zone in West Harlem. Our block association has the following question. Our wheelie bins have been stolen in the past, so how can we secure them in the future, and how will sanitation workers lift them over parked cars where there is no space to wheel them through?
So the bins are going to be 55 gallons or less, which means that if the sanitation worker for some reason can't get access to from the sidewalk to the street, the bin is small enough that they can take the individual bags out and do it the way that they have always been doing it. We did think that through. And on the theft stuff, I take that seriously. I have not seen it to be a chronic problem, although it does happen from time to time. It's New York City. What I would say is we are not the first city in the world to push to containerize our trash and to use wheelie bins left out on the sidewalk. In fact, we're the last. And cities around the globe, in the United States, in Europe, everywhere else but New York City, have done this and have made it work. Obviously, if there's a theft of any property, you should always report it to the police. Eleanor?
So,
Hang on, use the mic so they can hear you on the live stream.
hi. So, could you talk to us a little bit about recycling? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I mean, and sort of banking off that a little bit, where does all the trash go now?
All right. There's let's just take 3 different types of the trash. The trash, the refuse, doesn't stay in New York City. So when we closed Fresh Kills, New York City, we were out of the landfill business. So all of our trash is exported. Some of it goes to an incinerator in New Jersey, but the vast majority of it goes to one of our marine transfer stations where it gets put out on a boat. It gets crated up, put out on a boat, and either sent upstate or to other parts of the country. The recycling, the traditional recycling, the metal, glass, plastic, and the paper and cardboard, it's amazing. In New York City, I give the Bloomberg administration extreme amount of kudos for this. It's basically closed loop, meaning the recycling, virtually all of it stays in New York City and is recycled in plants in New York City, and then either reused in New York City or sold on the commodity markets. And how those commodity markets are doing very much impacts the costs of the recycling program. But the recycling, generally, you should think of it as staying in New York City. The composting will go two different types of places. The first is obviously it gets composted, meaning it gets turned into soil. We also send the organic waste a lot of it to our wastewater treatment plants, where it gets anaerobically digested and it gets turned into energy on the grid. And for that, we work with DEP. Right now, we have universal composting service in all of Brooklyn and all of Queens. This fall, we'll do Manhattan, Staten Island, and the Bronx. And as part of that, over the next several months, we're also diversifying where the compost goes. So we're expanding our capacity to process the compost waste. So that's going to change over the next 6 to 9 months.
We have another question from one of our online viewers, Lloyd Zuckerberg. I studied the system of trash pickup in Paris, and when I worked for the Grand Central Partnership in the early 90s. I live on the Upper East Side in the 70s and work in Midtown. While I appreciate that you are implementing a program to place trash in containers, I noticed that they are often filled over the rims so the tops don't close and garbage pours out of them. Plus, once they've been emptied, they sit on the sidewalk in some cases for more than a day. When will you start enforcing the rules with fines so that people start implementing this program in the way you intend?
So we have done, I want to, you said the person's name is Lloyd. I want to tell Lloyd, we are doing a lot of enforcement of this program. And the reason you see as many bins on the streets now, part of it, at least, I can attribute to our enforcement efforts. We take a warnings first approach. So we give lots of warnings. When we started with the phase with the restaurants, the bodegas, the bars, and the delis, we give out something like 30,000 warnings in a month. And we saw that those warnings really drove compliance over that month, so that by the time we got to enforcing with summonses, the numbers were like a fraction of what the warnings were. But every day we are out focused on enforcing the containerization rules, especially now when it's new, because you have to make sure that we're like driving the change that we want to see. I will also tell Lloyd that just putting it in a container is not enough. It has to be in a container with a tight fitting lid. And so where we see the containers overflowing, those businesses are also subject to the very same summonses that they would get if they are not using containers. And what we see is, as we enforce, at a certain point after one ticket, it gets to the point where, oh yes, I should just buy another bin. I need an extra bin. And we've seen a lot of businesses respond in that way. So I agree and acknowledge it is not perfect, but we are so far ahead of where we were when we started this. And I think farther ahead than where I thought we would be at this point in terms of compliance.
I don't know if everyone realizes that the sanitation department, speaking of businesses, can regulate things like the bins, but does not pick up the trash from businesses, just from residences. So could you talk a little bit about commercial waste collection and disposal and what you're doing to reform that?
Yes. In 2019, the city as Carol said, the Department of Sanitation historically has had very little, if anything, to do with the 20 million pounds of waste produced each day by businesses, either how it's set out or how it's collected. It's collected by a network of private carters. Historically, those private carters have been able to crisscross the entire city. So their truck routes were really crazy. They may start in Manhattan and end up, go through all the boroughs and end up, or start in the Bronx and end up down in Staten Island. And it historically has been a very unsafe industry, lots of problems associated with it. So in 2019, the city council passed legislation that would require the Department of Sanitation to basically license 3 carters to operate in each of the 20 commercial carting zones that the city was broken up into. We have done that. The contracting process in New York City is really quite something, but we were incredibly thorough and thoughtful. We have issued the approvals, licenses in each of for 3 carters in each of the 20 zones. And we are piloting this new model in Queens this coming fall. And then from there, we will roll out the other 19 zones. This is a huge deal. Only advocates are thinking about it right now, but this is a really big deal. There is a lot of upside when this goes well. The truck miles will go down by 50%. The commercial carting industry will become much, much safer. There are a lot of worker protections associated with it. There are a lot of good things in there. But if it goes wrong, and we've seen it go wrong in other cities, look at LA as an example, that means 20 million pounds of trash doesn't get collected each day. If it's one day, that's not great. But if it's 2 or 3 days, that's a public health crisis. And so we are being incredibly thoughtful about how and when we are rolling this out, but also aggressive, because there is clearly a lot to gain in this city from rolling it out. But it starts in its first zone this fall.
Alan?
Hi. Hi. So a question and then a little observation. The wheelie bins that the residences are going to be using, you're manufacturing them. So at some point, will there be a requirement that people use those bins and they wind up having to pay for it and if they have to replace them? And the observation is, I know in areas like the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, it's going to be more than 1% of parking spots lost. And it's interesting, it may come at the same time as congestion pricing, which may increase the pressure on those areas. And I just wonder if people are thinking about the idea of like many cities have, residential permits.
Residential what?
Permits.
I know that's not in your purview, but there's a perfect storm developing here. So
I hate not in my purviewing. I hate to do that. That one truly isn't in my purview, but I do encourage you to have Adonis here to talk all about residential permits.
Thanks.
Okay.
That's an inside joke. I would like it to, excuse me for interrupting all of you who might have a question. What does the effect of congestion pricing have on the Department of Sanitation? And if you could explain that a little, I think it would be helpful.
I am not sure what the impacts of congestion pricing will be on the department. I know, for example, I hope that they're minimal. I know, for example, that our sanitation trucks have been exempted from it because that would be a problem, but I'm not really sure that what the other impacts could be. Yeah, the wheelie bins are, okay. We did this thing in contracting called a concession agreement to build this wheelie bin, where we did a competitive process and we solicited all companies that could produce bins in the world. And we said, we want a high quality bin that we can sell at significantly below market rates. And we put a price cap in there. We said for the most common size, the price that you bid cannot be more than $50. And so by doing this competitive process, we've selected a vendor who does this for cities across the United States called Otto. And they are going to produce this bin to, rat proof to our specifications. And it is going to be sold at significantly below market rates. When I say significantly, I mean like half the price of what you could get in a hardware store today. And that was a very important piece of it. This has to be an affordable program. We can't use, trash can't like break the bank. And so we took the extra time to go through that concession process so that we ended up with a long-term model that would be affordable.
Any more questions?
We haven't finalized the contract yet, but what I can tell you is Otto came forward at pricing that met our specification, which was no more than $50 for the most common size.
Hi, it sounds like you're doing excellent work. Thank you very much. As a longtime resident of the financial district neighborhood, and the neighborhood has changed a lot, including the density, and we are in that bespoke neighborhood that you've spoken about before. How are you going to be able to address the density of the garbage that is produced with the narrow sidewalks and all the scaffolding? We can't wait till you get downtown.
So there's about, I think it was something like, don't quote me, I'll have to go back and look and tell you, but it's something like 5% of city streets in which, or residential blocks in the city, where the containerization model that we've put forward doesn't work. There's just, as you mentioned, too much trash and the sidewalks are too narrow. Or the streets are too narrow, excuse me. And so for those blocks, or for those parts of the city, but really blocks, we're going to look at things like increasing service or coming up with custom solutions on those streets. It's not so many streets that it would cause chaos, but there are streets in the city, Cedar Street is an example, where the model just doesn't work. The numbers don't add up. But they will have to have custom solutions, maybe 6-day-a-week pickup, something like that.
Hi, I just wanted to briefly revisit the wheelie bins. And I was wondering, for residential buildings, could you clarify whether or not the building owners, the tenants will be paying for them? And then also, in the inevitable case that a wheelie bin is broken during trash collection, will the department be paying for the replacement bins, or will the owners or tenants of the building pay for that as well?
So the property owners are responsible for purchasing the bins. Now, whether the property owner passes the cost down to the tenants, likely. But officially, it is the property owner's responsibility to provide the bins. What was your other question? Oh, breaking. So it will be the property owner's responsibility. I do not anticipate this to be a massive problem in the city, because we are not, the standard bin that we are building is a high quality bin. It is not a flimsy bin. But if it does become, if we do see that it becomes a chronic problem, and we will test it out before the requirement for these standardized bins goes into effect 2 years from now, we will set up some type of, I assume, claims process with the controller.
Hi. So full disclosure, my day job is at the MTA. You're going to love congestion pricing. Yeah.
I live on 79th and I work in Lower Manhattan.
You're going to love.
I'm gonna love it.
Okay, you're going to love it. 150,000 fewer vehicles on the streets. So much easier for your trucks to get around. My question is actually about the impact of the pandemic. And the fact that the office occupancy rates are down, people are spending more time at home in residential neighborhoods. I just wonder if, as you think about, is it having impacts on sort of where the trash is? And are you changing your approach to cleaning the city because of it?
The amount of trash we collect each year at the department has gone down slightly since the pandemic, meaning the numbers, the tonnage now is slightly less than the pre-pandemic tonnage. But I think what your question is really getting at is the parts of the city that are not as used are the commercial buildings, and we do not collect commercial trash. The network of private carters collects commercial trash, so I cannot be as thoughtful in that answer as that question deserves, because we don't collect the commercial trash.
But isn't it true, as this person who asked before, that there's now residential activity in places that you used to not think about that much, say, like financial district. So as the pattern of
and as new residential properties come online, there's a process for them to sign up for Department of Sanitation service. But what I would say is, in the 2 years I have been doing this, we have not noticed major differences or changes where we're collecting more residential trash in parts of the city that had previously been commercial. That doesn't mean it's not happening. It's just not happening at a large enough scale that you would see the difference in the aggregate trash numbers.
We have time for one more question.
Yep, we've got one more question right over here.
So I know New York is kind of currently playing catch up with all this, but with the aggressive but achievable timeline, it really does feel like in 5 years, trash on the street will be a fever dream. So my question is, where do you see the department maybe in 10 or 15 years? Do you think we could kind of be a global leader in sanitation?
We should be. We really should be. And like that was like part of the opportunity coming to the Department of Sanitation. It's a great department. I mean, the workforce is unbelievable. They work so hard. It is not glamorous work. They do it with a lot of dignity and a lot of honor, and they do a great job. But the opportunity here was to take an agency that had been functioning like very much in the practices of 50 years ago and go, I don't want to, it's not right to say from last to first, but really do a massive modernization effort that can and should wind us as leading the pack. And that's what really is like a very exciting opportunity for me. I've always been drawn to agencies in the city that are ready for a big modernization. And sanitation certainly is one of them.
Alice?
I was just going to ask about those bins that we see on the corner. You know, how do they, because they're still around and they're open and they're hanging out there.
Okay. So a few things. I'm so happy you asked that. And even though Alice is my aunt, I did not plant that question. Oops. So 2 things. The bins, I don't know if I broke this. I'm sorry if they can't hear it. Do you want me to use the microphone? The bins on the corner are gross, the mesh bins. No one wants to see it. I don't know why they're mesh. I don't know why they're see-through. We're replacing them. We're replacing them with these much more modern, more opaque, rat-proof litter baskets that are also larger, so they overflow less, which is great. The thing that makes me crazy, the other thing that makes me crazy about litter baskets is if you've walked and seen them on commercial corridors, many commercial corridors in the city or parts of the city have business improvement districts or BIDs, which provide supplemental sanitation services in those areas. What we have seen is now that the businesses are getting the trash bags off of the streets, oftentimes the only trash bags on the streets during the day are the trash bags that the BIDs, the cleaning crews from the BIDs, leave right next to the litter baskets. Why? Because it's always been allowed. But that is my next frontier in the war on the black bags. You cannot say to all businesses in the city, you have to put your trash in containers, but the supplemental cleaning services, they can leave the trash bags next to the litter basket. It truly makes no sense. And so that is something that I have my eye very much on and looking to tackle in the coming weeks. Interesting. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Jesse, thank you. Thank you very much. Evening. And you are a brave, brave commissioner. Thank you all for coming.